I think we can slowly but surely start. We have quite a audience already logged in and ready to go. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Hello to all of you guys. First of all, welcome to the NextLabs webinar on cybersecurity maturity model certification in NIST 800-171. My name is Torsten Walti. I want to, first of all, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being with us on Zoom. I know a lot of people probably are zoomed out, but we're going to make this as interactive as possible. This webinar, just for your information, is going to be recorded. So if you want to come back to watch it again, or if you want to forward the recording to any of your coworkers or friends and associates, please feel free. If you have any issues in regards to recording, please make sure this is recorded. And also, if you have any questions during the session, please use the button on the bottom of Zoom, which is the Q&A function. Type in your questions. We will collect the questions, and the experts will go through the questions and answers at the end. If we run out of time and don't address all the questions, we will certainly follow up and get you those informations. So with that, further ado, let's just jump right in. And again, thank you for joining us. And if we go to the next slide, we have a quite esteemed panel of experts that are taking us through today's webinar. And with further ado, I wanted to introduce Anne-Marie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anne-Marie Colombo. I'm a cybersecurity solution advisor with SAP.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. And Roy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Roy Hugh. I'm a managing director within Accenture. I'm a CMMC registered practitioner and have been leading security compliance projects over the past 15 plus years, focusing a lot on NIST 800-171 CMMC over the past 6 years.
Thank you, Roy. Krishna.
Hey, everyone. My name is Krishna Mohan Dubaka. I'm a director of solution engineering at NextLabs. I primarily look after SAP product suite at NextLabs. So we're going to see a demo later today on the product.
Thank you, Krishna. And last but not least, my name is Torsten Walti. I lead the Aerospace Defense Industry Business Unit at SAP, and I'm the MC for today's webinar. So with further ado, let's jump right into our objectives and the agenda for today. We already completed the introduction. The objective of our webinar is really to give you an understanding of CMMC and NIST, share with you the insights and experiences around the efforts, the projects in that area, what you can expect out of the upcoming processes to get CMMC certified, the impact on your SAP COE, and what you can do and what tools are available, what accelerators are available, and what is even more important is to share with you a couple of examples of tools and demos, what you can do in regards to the CMMC process. So I hope all the content and the experts that we have on the call will help you to go through this. And let's jump right into the topic. Roy, what is CMMC versus NIST versus DFAR? There's a lot of these acronyms that jumping in around and a lot of confusions, and help us kind of level set how to attack this topic.
Thanks, Torsten. So before I give an overview and be able to dispel some of the acronyms and guidance from an industry perspective, I do want to note that for official information and updates about CMMC and the NIST special publication guidelines, please go to the CMMC accreditation body website, along with DoD and NIST reference sites that we'll also include at the end of this webinar. Some of the information are in this presentation is actually pulled from contests from the CMMC accreditation body and DoD and so forth. So just want to give that note there first. So for folks that are not familiar with this special publication NIST 171 and CMMC, I'll spend a few minutes going through a brief background for having to support a number of different clients across different industries over the past, I would say, 6+ years. So the main reason why these regulations were established and guidelines was the fact that, to protect sensitive information to the government, especially with the Department of Defense, there had to be certain contractual regulations, including the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement, or DFARS, as well as guidelines to be able to provide to industry of how to go about to put measures in place. We were seeing, as well as the government agencies, especially the DoD, that sensitive but unclassified information was not being properly handled by many different companies across the defense industrial base. Sensitive data was either mishandled, lost, stolen, and compromised by insider or external threats. And there had to be proper things to be able to put in place to be able to control that and be able to validate that companies that are handling this information on behalf of the government are having adequate security measures to be able to protect and secure the confidentiality of that information. So back in around 2015, there are DFARS clauses, two DFARS clauses, 252.204-7012, as well as 7019, was put in place to be able to establish that pre or post award of these contracts, measures have to be put in place to be able to align with this special publication NIST 171 with this 110 controls for companies to be able to meet and address adequate security measures in order to continue doing business with the Department of Defense. Now, if you fast forward a couple of years after that, when it was first instilled, that the DoD recognized that the self-attestation against this NIST 171 controls just wasn't really, meeting their expectation. Companies were either stating that they are meeting the controls, but in reality they weren't meeting all the controls, or that they were having a number of gaps that were listed in their plan of action milestone or POAMs that wasn't adequately being addressed in a timely manner. Thus, the DoD, we are working with industry, established the cybersecurity maturity model certification to be able to provide a third-party assessor organization or approved through a third-party assessor to be able to come into these organizations and actually determine whether those controls are in place. Additionally, CMMC provide additional controls and guidelines of what it takes to be able to meet certain maturity levels 1 through 5, and we'll go through more details of that, down the road. But in addition, the CMMC also outlined 2 additional DFARS clauses, which also provides additional guidance of what the steps are required to be able to get to a certain maturity level to handle control unclassified information.
This is really interesting topics, but if we look at it from a perspective, Roy, does this only pertain to aerospace defense companies that just do business with the DoD, or is that also applicable for broader industries?
Yeah, a very good point. And what we've seen from an industry perspective is a much broader impact of CMMC across different industries. Beyond the companies within the defense industrial base that are impacted and need to get CMMC certified from level 1 through 5 over the next five years or so, we're also seeing companies looking to adopt this framework to measure their own cybersecurity posture, or they desire to be able to achieve a level of certification for competitive advantages, to be able to market their services that they have a blessing from the DoD or the CMMC AB that they're at a certain maturity level of their cyber hygiene, and that can be able to create more business opportunities for them down the road. So we've seen all sorts of different companies looking to be able to use this as either a way to be able to provide a certification of themselves for contractual reasons or for other business reasons.
Yeah, and we've seen with the executive order from the White House, especially in the US, but also with the MOD, right, a very high focus in getting this done. You mentioned there's a timeline of 5 years to get a lot of suppliers in the DoD business certified. So what is, in order really to focus to hit these timelines, what are some of the critical areas that you really need to focus on when you go through the CMMC process or certification process?
Yeah, so what we've seen in terms of number of companies looking to achieve the CMMC certification is, there's this process to be able to, look at what level of maturity that they are contractually obligated to meet. So that's one stance. Another stance is, determining that is how do they identify where they need to focus on in terms of outlining their certification accreditation boundary within their environment. As you see here, in terms of the numbers of the percentage of companies or within the defense industrial base that would need to achieve a particular level of maturity within CMMC. Yeah, but from our perspective, what we're seeing is a lot of the emphasis in the work has really been within the CMMC maturity level 3 area. About 30% makeup of the total approximately 300,000 companies within the defense industrial base or DIB. And a lot of the work of these companies are trying to achieve this because of contractual reasons. But that life cycle of getting to that level varies between companies based on where they currently stand today in terms of maturity level, as well as what they need to do to be able to address those gaps.
This is probably in everybody's mind. If you really go into these different steps and levels to go through a CMMC project, what does it look like? What does it entail from activities, timeline, efforts? Can you shed a little bit more light into the structure of a CMMC project? What can someone expect, even as a small to medium-sized company, or even a larger one?
Sure. Yeah. What we've seen, and we've bucketized in sort of 3 main phases. Obviously, there's other elements depends on each company, but it really starts with the compliance readiness. Does the company understand where their data lives? Where their control unclassified information or covered defense information that would be tied contractually to a specific work with the Department of Defense that will entail them or require them to get CMMC certified. So understanding where that lives within the environment, and then do they go through the exercise of getting their entire enterprise certified, or do they carve out a subset of that within an enclave where they just get that enclave certified with the appropriate systems, networks, and components in that area. So understanding that is key. Then after that's determined is, do they really understand where the gaps are within the boundary? Are there gaps within the applications? Are there network devices that have gaps? So having that discovery phase and be able to understand the true analysis of the gaps, whether they can do it themselves or they need to have assistance from a third party system integrator to be able to support on that. We've seen a number of cases where it is a combination of both. Companies have internal teams as well as seeking external help to be able to validate some of those gaps. And that will lead into developing the strategy and a roadmap of how to be able to address those gaps over a period of time. Then going to the second area that you see here in the middle, as far as remediation of gaps, how do the companies execute it in an effective manner? Not only be able to address the practices and processes, but also technical controls where we've seen it can be challenging at times where if they need to implement a new technology solution or reconfigure, their existing set of capabilities, is that going to be a broader impact across their organization? Is that going to be impact to the business? So that, needs to be aligned with the overall schedule of when they need to do it, how do they go about doing it, and then does that meet their deadlines to be able to achieve a level of compliance to get a third party in, certify them, as well as be able to bid on contracts that are tied into that requirement. So that phase does take a good amount of time, but it also varies, as I mentioned before, from company to company. Some companies may only take a few weeks to be able to remediate any of the gaps that they are able to find. And in other instances, we've seen companies, looking at potentially years to be able to remediate all the potential gaps. And when it comes to CMMC certification, in order to achieve a maturity level, you must address all the controls. You cannot have any gaps, that you cannot able to cover. So it's either all or nothing approach. Either you don't meet the controls and don't get certified, or you have to meet 100% of the controls to get to that maturity level for certification purposes. And then going into the operational state, as far as sustainment is concerned, this is a ongoing process, not a snapshot in time where company is able to address the controls, get certified, and call it a day. It is a continuous process to be able to maintain a state of compliance, as well as be able to be ready for the next cycle, because the certification is a 3-year cycle. So instead of waiting till a few months before the next round of recertification, it is our recommendation that it is a continuous process, not only just for compliance purposes, but also just cyber hygiene in general. You got to make sure that continuously evolve the security practices and procedures and technical solutions, because our adversaries that are looking to compromise sensitive data are going to up their game, and companies need to do the same as well.
Yeah, Roy, you bring it up a couple of really, really good points. Things that just jump out of the discussion here is, as I said, it's a fail or pass situation, which means a lot of people really have to plan for this, prepare for this, do their due diligence in the process in regards to the understanding of the gaps, the compliance readiness, as well as remediation, and then also set themselves up for the support. Can you shed a little bit timeline perspective on it? Especially, we talked about the process of 5-year certification. For some people, this may say, well, I don't need to do anything. I can procrastinate till the last minute. But any insights, experience in regards to timing, priority, approaching this from a timeline perspective, or interdependencies to other projects?
Yeah, I would encourage companies that they haven't started the process already and they're looking to get certified for at any maturity level to run through the drill that I've outlined here. Understand the environment, understand the gaps, and be able to determine what it's going to take to be able to address those gaps and be prepared for a third-party audit. To determine if the controls are truly in place. And the auditors at a particular maturity level, especially maturity level 3 and above, they will look at collecting evidence to support their findings. And as I mentioned before, it's going to vary for each company, and depends on also what level of maturity level they're looking to achieve as well. But the earlier the company can get started in terms of determining their approach, their strategy, timeline, the better off that they're going to be able to minimize the business impact as well as impact across the organization for planning purposes. Another thing that to note is, this process, whether it's the readiness, reviews or remediation, this all takes time and effort as well as cost. And cost is a big factor for companies, where do they need to determine you know, the required funding that's going to take to remediate, you know, those gaps, because, you know, they may or may not have the right return on investment for bidding on contracts if it's going to cost more to fix, you know, the potential gaps than what the contracts are worth that they're looking to bid on. That's going to require the CMMC certification. So that analysis is important. Outlining a strategy and roadmap and timing of that, to have the full picture, is critical to determine how to move forward. And also see if it's even doable. And also lining up, you know, potentially a C3PO, a CMMC, a third-party assessor organization, be able to gear up for that official assessment for CMMC certification.
Yeah, and Roy, you're also bringing up a really good point, is gearing up for the certification process. Companies should also consider the fact that at the moment, there's only 2 companies that really certify. So there will probably also be a bottleneck if all the companies all of a sudden approach these 2 companies. There will probably be more, but at the moment, there's only 2. So there's probably also an external capacity constraint that comes into the play here as well, I can imagine.
Right. Yeah, and you know, according to the DoD as well as the CMMC accreditation body, is, you know, the priority for CMMC certification, especially the fact that there's very few, you know, C3POs that's been approved. Priority will be given to the contracts coming out that will have the CMMC requirement. But we're seeing companies across different industries want to get, you know, compliant, you know, faster in order to get into the queue and start contacting the C3POs, you know, people to get certified. Even though they may not have a contract coming up in the near term, they do want to be prepared when their number is called, that they are ready to get a C3PO in their organization and get the CMMC certification as soon as possible.
Yeah. You also made a really good point in regards to operational support and the process itself. In the past, every time or often we discussed cybersecurity, it was kind of sort of a topic that was thrown over to the CISO organization and saying, they're dealing with it, they're dealing with a firewall, and so forth and so on. But we can clearly see in the process that you outlined, this is really going into the in all the different system areas, in all the different environments. Since this is a very tight process and timeline constrained and resource constrained, and in order to be better prepared to get into the process, it's always helping if you have the right tools and the right accelerators. This is a really great topic to just ask you, Anne-Marie, in regards to a company that runs SAP. What kind of tools and accelerators are available for SAP COEs, and what's at their disposal to support them?
Yeah, it's a good question, Torsten, and it is clear that if an organization does have CUI or FCI data stored in their SAP system, or even transitioning through the SAP system, that data is subject to CMMC and the CMMC controls. But we follow the same process that Roy just laid out earlier in terms of finding that data. So first, assess the risk, find the data in the SAP system, understand the current controls. You may have already addressed some of these controls with some of the SAP tools that are already owned by the organization, and or come with the maintenance contract. For instance, the configuration management domain in CMMC. We have something called, Solution Manager that has some security controls for SAP from a landscape perspective and comes with the maintenance contract. And one of the reports there is called configuration validation, and that allows you to test against a security baseline that you can set up through Solution Manager for your SAP system to help you look at addressing that configuration management requirement. So you end up with a security baseline for SAP, and then you run the configuration validation test report through Solution Manager and get the reporting to look at your security baseline and make sure that none of those configurations have changed. And then, once you look at what you already have, figure out the gaps, what additional controls are needed, how you're going to remediate those gaps, and plan to test and monitor the controls within the system to make sure that those controls, the existing that you have and the new that you add, are still working. So that's the first step, is to assess the SAP system against the CMMC requirements. And then there are additional options with SAP that we can look at against those CMMC requirements.
Yeah. What are some of the tools and accelerators that are available for SAP or companies that run SAP?
Yeah, so it's interesting because a few years ago we went through the whole exercise for GDPR, and it's interesting because some of the same tools apply and accelerators. So if we look at the requirements from CMMC around access controls, limiting data access to only authorized users, we have a full suite of identity access governance tools that can help report on user access, and also they can interact with any third-party identity access management tools that an organization may have, and also support multi-factor authentication, providing authentication through single sign-on identity authentication to prove identity and make sure users have the right level of authorizations for the SAP system, and through either access control, identity access governance with role-based access control, or attribute-based access control, such as NextLabs dynamic authorization management. So that helps organizations comply with the principle of least privilege and make sure that the users only see the data that they need to see to do their job and nothing more. We touched already on configuration management. Risk management is another area that SAP has a number of software tools that may help manage risk within the organization, which is a key requirement. Risk management is a domain within CMMC. And SAP's risk management software can support the NIST risk management framework. It's also integrated into access control, SAP process control, SAP audit management. So that gives you a full suite of products that also allow, through process control, to set up and test internal controls on your business processes, and then automate the audit process and protect the audit data through SAP audit management. Through CMMC, the requirement from an audit perspective is to protect that audit information as well. And audit logs are available from the SAP system and pre-processed through a tool we have called Enterprise Threat Detection that helps make sense of those audit logs and does this pre-processing in order to give visibility to tools like SIM tools like Splunk, QRadar, ArcSight, so that it's easier to deal with the audit logs out of the SAP system. It also helps with detecting attacks, because typically the IT infrastructure tools can't see into the SAP system. They don't have the visibility. And of course, that's where the critical data, the CUI data, the FCI data resides, normally is inside the application, and those are infrastructure tools. So Enterprise Threat Detection helps give visibility to those tools into the SAP system so that they get the visibility and can, and Enterprise Threat Detection reports on user behavior inside the application. So if a user had compromised credentials to an IT infrastructure tool, that's going to look like legitimate user, but Enterprise Threat Detection can tell that this user is behaving anomalously and alert based on that user behavior. It's not normal behavior for this user inside the SAP system, so it can then send alerts off to Splunk, QRadar, or ArcSight, or any other SIM tool. that's out there. And then finally, with SAP and SAP NS2, we see our customers migrating to the cloud to have SAP or the hyperscalers start to pick up some of those security requirements and controls that are out there, so that they rely on managed service to keep them up to date on security controls that are required, and to add additional security controls. So there's additional areas that SAP might be able to help with, but the first step is looking at that data, where the data is, and understanding what you need to do to protect it.
Yep. And yeah, there was a comment, just Anne-Marie, just to speak up a little bit, but in addition to that, I think you made a really good point. There's the tools available for companies that run SAP in their own data center, their own stuff. Plus, there is information available as you go through the process if you use SAP Cloud Solutions. Can you also tap a little bit into a topic in regards to recovery and get the mindset ready for that area before we hop over to an example?
Yes, that's a very good point, Torsten, because this is something that when we work with organizations, it's always a question, and it's something that people should pay attention to. It's I think most companies feel at this point that it's not if, it's when they're going to suffer some sort of cyber event, and it's important to be able to have that resiliency and be able to recover. From a manufacturing standpoint, how long can your SAP system be down? And it may be that it's not the SAP system that's been attacked, but maybe you isolate the SAP system because you have another system that's being attacked, and you want to make sure that the SAP system is not infected. So you isolate the SAP system, you take your manufacturing plants offline, for instance, and if they're offline for 2 weeks, how much does that cost your organization? So we're starting to have more and more conversations about recovery, resiliency, and how the cloud solutions from SAP might be able to help with that.
Yep. And that's a really good point. If we pick up the comment from Roy before, that this is an ongoing process, the CMC certification, but it's also putting the processes to the latest level, and help in that utilizing tools will be accelerating the efforts, and all that efforts, not only for the certification, but keeping up the certification, but also in the process in case somebody gets attacked, right? Some of the similar tools are utilized in that area. Now, let's look at an example of really how are some of the tools in full action. With that, I wanted to hand it over to our friends at NextLabs to really get into details. Krishna, can you share us a little example how that works?
Thank you, Anne, Roy, and Torsten. Thanks for setting up the stage. So now that we have seen what is CMMC and what it takes to be compliant with it, in this section we're gonna take a sample business scenario, create a kind of a business case, and see how we can achieve the CMMC and what are the requirements and how we can achieve in a kind of a use case scenario here. So we have a company X, which is actually a manufacturing company. So they built highly complex communication devices, and they are trying to be a supplier to DoD, Department of Defense. And in order to be a supplier, they need to qualify. And part of the qualification, one of the key requirement is to be certified with CMMC. So that's where the company is trying to get certified, and they're trying to target. They're targeting to be have a certification by 2023. And the director of cybersecurity, Mr. Smith, he's trying to transform this particular function with a key objective of basically improving and be compliant with the CMMC, and also be able to maintain it, right? It's not just about having it done once, but ability to continue to maintain it correctly. In this whole process, they actually identified some key challenges which are kind of very typical for any organization, right? Especially although they're able to deal with the classified data, when it comes to unclassified data, especially the CUI, there are some gaps. And so following the objectives he wanted to achieve with this particular requirement. So basically CUI must be safeguarded to prevent unauthorized disclosure, right? And the CUI data needs to be monitored and protected for proper safeguarding. And also when you share that information with anybody else, in terms of a file or an attachment, that needs to be protected using digital rights management type of a solution. And also it's not just to do this in one application. They're looking for a solution which can be applied across different applications, and ability to do that at a central place. So those are the key requirements for this particular business scenario. Let's take a look at these challenges and how we can solve it using NextLabs solution. Now that we have seen the business scenario, let's take a look how we can use NextLab products to protect CUI. So the approach that we take is what we call a policy-driven approach. So let's see what is a policy-driven approach here. So basically, NextLab has a patented dynamic authorization technology using which organizations can leverage ABAC, attribute-based access controls, and centralized policy management to define policies to control access to sensitive data or control unclassified data. And also you can do much more granular level of control using different attributes, and attributes from user, attribute from a resource, or even attributes from a context, like for example, time of the day or the location, kind of a geolocation based controls. So all those variety of controls can be implemented using attribute based policy design. So again, NextLab product can support both structured data and unstructured data. Structured data basically means all the table data or the transaction data that you see in SAP. Unstructured data would be like when you download a report, for example, into a file like an Excel file, or maybe if you take a download a PDF or a 3D graphics diagram from SAP. So all those will become unstructured data. So the NextLab product supports both structured and unstructured data, and we'll see an example down the line in the demo. We'll show you how to control a unstructured data, basically a file that you download from SAP, and when you send it to somebody else, how you can put controls around that so that you can define who can see and who cannot see. So at a high level, if you look at the key features that we have, so the main thing is the policy-driven capability. Policy-driven capability to support dynamic data level security and fine-grained data access governance in SAP. It's a centrally managed system. So there is one central system where you define a policy, and in the definition of the policy, you can tell for whom you are applying the policy and why you are applying, and also tell when exactly you want to apply, right? Maybe the policy is relevant only for certain scenarios, right? Not for every scenario, or maybe certain particular date and time. Maybe, for example, maybe during the period end close, or maybe during the year end close, for example, right? You can have those controlled definitions in the policy. So we'll show you an example down the line. And one good thing is that these particular policies are completely independent of UI. So it doesn't matter whether you're using a traditional GUI or a Fiori or even a web front end to SAP. So everywhere the policies will be applied. It's a transaction independent, Fiori app independent, and API independent. Even if somebody extracting data via an API through a middleware, for example, so you could still apply the policies on those scenarios as well. Again, the good thing is that it natively integrates into ECC and S4HANA. And we also have a full support to what we call audit support, or audit and requirement related logging. So basically we monitor, track, and create all the reporting of all the activities. So basically you can see why a specific user is denied access, and then what is the policy that is actually denied the access to him. It also captures who is allowed, like maybe you want to look at why a user is able to see a specific data, you can go back and see the log. So basically you have pre-built reports that can tell you to to track and monitor the log. And also we have a mechanism to alert. Let's say if somebody is trying to access sensitive data, so you can define an alert, and then the message or notification will go to certain group of people, maybe your data security team or data privacy team, for example, right? And it's also one of the key things for audit. We'll show you an example later. So you can build a report and extract a report, and then that can be used to support your audit, especially when it comes to CUI. And it's also possible to extract the data and load this data into a SIM tool. For example, if the organization wide you have a SIM tool that you're using for incident and response management, so this log can also be combined or loaded into SIM, and then you can do the analysis directly on there. So all these features are there. So we'll take a quick look at in the system how the policy looks and how you can easily design and deploy. In this example, we'll see how to prevent unauthorized access to CUI, control unclassified information. The business process I took here is a NPI, new product introduction. So part of NPI, typically before the product is publicly released or announced, companies, organization would like to keep the new product information protected, and also only authorized people can have access to that. So we'll demonstrate how you can use NextLabs product to achieve such type of access control on a CUI that is connected to product information. In this example, the way I set it up, so there is a BOM, bill of material in SAP, and the BOM has multiple sub-assemblies connected to it. Some of the sub-assemblies are sensitive, so meaning only authorized people can see those sub-assemblies, and others are non-sensitive, meaning anybody can go and see. So the way we set it up, we took a BOM, and there are three different sub-assemblies. Two of them are assigned to one project, which is a sensitive project, and the other one is assigned to another project, project B. So based on the user's assignment into the project, the visibility of the component in the BOM is controlled. And so all these things are achieved using attribute-based policy. So basically you use a user attribute and you compare them with a resource attribute, and then you decide whether a user is allowed to see or not. Let's take a look at this in the system.
Before I demonstrate user 1, user 2, I want to quickly show the complete structure of the BOM. So the BOM is C_1240. So we have three sub-assemblies within the BOM, FG lens, FG thermal image, and spectral band. FG lens and spectral band both are assigned to project B, whereas thermal image is part of project A. So now let's log in as engineer 1. So this is engineer 1. Let's go into maintain BOM application, try to display the BOM C_1240. So before we display it, let's look into the search functionality here. As you start typing the characters, it will show up the possible values from the search. Here you can see that there are some materials with the full description of the material, but there are a few materials where the material description is with star. So basically these are all masked because this particular user do not have permission to these materials. That's why they are shown in mask. Let's pick a material that he has access to. Yeah, it's infrared camera, and go into the explosion of the BOM. Yeah, as you can see, even though there are 3 total components in the BOM, he is only seeing one of them, which is thermal image. That is because thermal image is only subassembly that is assigned to project A. The other 2 subassemblies are actually part of project B. That's why he's not able to see it here. Let's quickly check from engineer 2. This is engineer 2. Try to open the same BOM. As you can see, we have field level control as well. Even though user B, engineer 2, can see the material and the corresponding other attributes, but this specific description he is not authorized to see. That's why you see it is in the mask data. Yeah, when he looks at the BOM explosion, you could see that he's seeing two different subassemblies when compared to engineer 1, who was only seeing one of them. For example, he was seeing thermal image, whereas user 2, he could see lens and spectral bands.
In this example, we'll see how to safeguard CUI, especially the unstructured data, using digital rights management. So NextLab has a product that supports the digital rights management, and we can use the product to protect the unstructured data, mainly the files. A file that you download from SAP, maybe a report that you're downloading, or maybe a PDF as an output of purchase order, for example. Or it could be a 3D design document that is connected to your engineering record. So any data that comes out of SAP that gets into unstructured format like a file, we can control, first of all, whether who can extract the data out of SAP, and even after extracting, who is allowed to see the particular file, even when he shares the file with somebody else, either within the organization or beyond the organization. You can put some controls so that only authorized people can see the file. And also you can actually also have a watermark on the file, so that even if some fraudulent user trying to take a picture of the file, it could still trace it based on the watermark. So all these capabilities are there, part of the product. So we will demonstrate that functionality using this particular scenario. We have 3 different users on this particular scenario: BOM Engineer 1, Project 1, and Engineer 4. BOM Engineer 4 has no permission, so he cannot download a specific document connected to a BOM in SAP. Whereas Engineer 1 can see, he has full permission. He can download the file, he can view the file, he can edit the file, he can print the file. Whereas a Project 1, he can view the file, but he cannot edit the file. Okay, so that's the way we set it up. Let's take a look at it in the system.
So this is BOM Engineer 1 in SAP system. We're going to run a transaction CS03, which is a display of a BOM. This is a material BOM that we have created, and on the material BOM, on the header data, we have different DIR, document info records, that are connected to it. We're going to pick a specific. We can have multiple DIRs, so we're going to pick a specific DIR here, and then this particular DIR has the attachments connected to it as part of linked objects. As you can see, there are 2 attachments connected here. One is a cylinder VDS file. It's a 3D visual drawing file, and then we also have a SAP Pocket Knife. It's as a VDS file. So Engineer 1 let's try to view the file and also to download the file. So when you try to view the file, let's say when you try to double click to view the file, so what happens is that the file temporarily gets downloaded to a system, and then it opens up in the enterprise visual viewer. As you can see, now this is how he can view the file. Now let's try to download this document and then see whether the file gets protected or not. So to download the file, use the option of copy to. I'm going to download this to a folder called demo on the desktop on my system. So as you can see, the file has been downloaded. You can go and check the file. I'm going to check the file here. So it's in the desktop demo folder. You can see the file got created now. You can also see that there is an extension NXL, which means that this particular product, this particular attachment is protected, and NXL is the extension that NextLabs assigned to it when it protects the document. So on this protected document, you can also see currently, we have different users. So we have a SkyDRM component, which is part of the product. So that particular component manages the different users authorization. So I'm going to log in with the BOM Engineer 1 into the SkyDRM client. So I logged into bomb engineer 1. So if I try to open this particular protected document, as you can see, the document, it's open in the 3D Visual Enterprise viewer. So you can, it's a visual diagram. You can rotate it, and you can also play. You can also try to edit it. It has an option to edit as well, and you can also see that there is a watermark that gets generated on the document with user ID and also date and timestamp. So basically, with the watermark, you could also even if some fraudulent user trying to take a picture of it, you would still be able to trace it back. Who has who took the picture and also who tried to leak particular data. So in that way, the watermarks will be useful. So we can also see what are the permissions for this particular user on the file. So to check that, we can go back to the file and check the file info. So when you see the file info, it would list different permissions engineer 1 has on this particular document. Yep, you can see here. Okay. So he has he has permission to view, edit, print, save as, and also watermark. So those are the permissions for engineer 1 on that particular document. So for the same document, let's try to check with different user. Let's say engineer 4. He does not have any permissions as per the policy. So let me log in as engineer 4 and try to open the same document. Okay, I logged in as bomb engineer 4. Let's try to see the same document. Let's try to view the same document. Yeah, as you can see, it says access denied. So since he does not have access to the file, he does not have permission to the file to open it, and that's coming based on the policy at the time of the document being protected. When you're downloading the document from SAP, the time the policy, the DRM policy that we have written is applied on the document. That's why bomb engineer 4 is not able to view this particular document because he does not have access to it. You can also let's try to check with a different user, which is bomb project 1. He should be able to view the document, but he should not be able to edit the document. So let me log in as bomb project 1. I logged in as bomb project 1 user. So let's look at the same document again. Before I open it, I just want to let's see the permissions of the file for this particular user. As you can see, he has permission to view, print, save as. So he does not have permission to edit, and he does not have a watermark. So those are the permission. Whereas engineer 1, who is the kind of the owner of the particular document, he has every right. He has a view, edit, print, save as, and also watermark on the particular document. Let's try to open the document with the project 1. As you can see here, you can see he is able to see the document, and as you can see, there is no watermark. So it's again just to demonstrate that these functionalities are controlled with a policy. For this user, we did not include a watermark to demonstrate that. So similarly, let's try to edit this document and see what happens. I tried to change the color and see. Let me try to save as. So as you can see, there's a pop-up down below. You do not have permission to perform this particular action. So I can check that message again. you do not have permission to perform the save as operation. So all the changes he is doing, he will not be able to save. He is not able to save as, even in fact he should also not be able to save them as well. Let's try to save it. Cannot save model to the file. In this way, we demonstrated that at the time of downloading a document from SAP, the document will be protected based on the policies, and also the protected document will have different users will have different permissions on the document.
Okay, thank you. I know from a timing perspective, we had a third use case ready to go. While we had all the different sections, I really appreciate everybody putting some questions in the Q&A section. So, and I saw Roy really answering a lot of those already. Are there, for the last couple of minutes, are there other questions that people, based on the last section, had that we should get into? I give everybody a little bit of a chance to go through those things. I know there was a couple very interesting questions in regards to, I'll pick on one, the relationship between CMMC and ISO 27001/27018. And Roy, you answered that quickly. If somebody's already certified on ISO, does that help, or does that replace some of the CMC certification, especially on level 1 and 2?
It's not a replacement. You can't take the ISO certification and say and give it to a CMMC assessor, because they'll still have to go through and reassess those controls to make sure that it's in place. They need to be able to document the required information, evidence, especially at maturity level 3 and above for CMMC. Perfect.
Some of the answers, if you guys go back into the Q&A, are already there, but I'm just going to pick on some of them till some of the others coming out. Are there other questions? I know we're at the top of the hour. Last minute. No. We're publishing also the answers that were put out there. Roy and team has done a really good job of following up on it. I know there was one question in regards to the SAP landscape and the Microsoft environment. If you could respond and specify the areas, that would be great. But in any case, I really appreciate everybody's attention and time with us today. I also really appreciate and thank you to Anne-Marie, to Roy, and to Krishna for providing all the insights into this. At the end, we also want to give you a little bit of a link on a couple sources of information, as you can see in this window. Following up in the webinar, you will have all the links in regards to the different content that come along from the different companies, as well as from CMMC. With that, I really, really appreciate your time and attendance and interaction. I really thank also the presenters and NextLabs to host this and organize this. And I wish everyone a very good day and a safe day, and hope to see you soon. Thank you.